it looks like. Thank you all. I wanted to thank you all for joining us this evening for the Crime Prevention All City Town Hall. My name is Leslie Arroyo, and I'm the Communications Director for the city. And I will be tonight's moderator. For those of you that have joined us in the past, we've had a couple different all-city virtual town halls. You may have heard this before, but I just wanted to describe how tonight's meeting will go. First, all of our lines are muted, and that's just simply because of the technology. And for such a large phone call to occur, it's hard to make this a productive call when the lines are live. So we've had some questions that people have sent to us in advance, and we'll get to those questions after our panelists have talked. But if you do have a question tonight, as I mentioned earlier, there's 3 ways you can do this. You can email us at cityinfo@ssf.net during this call, and we'll address your email. If you are on your computer, you can do it in the Q&A section at the bottom of your computer. You can just type your question in there and we'll get you there. And then if you are not at a computer, you can also send a text. You can send that text to 650-636-6668. And if after this call a question does come up, please don't hesitate to email us at cityinfo@ssf.net, and we'll of course respond to your email. Tonight's Crime Prevention Town Hall features Senator Josh Becker, our Mayor, Mark Nagales, and our Police Chief Scott Campbell. In addition, we have our City Manager, Mike Futrell, who is also on the call to address any questions you might have. So with that, I'd like to welcome Senator Josh Becker, who will say a few words about legislation being discussed in Sacramento as it pertains to catalytic converter theft. We certainly thank you for joining us tonight, Senator Becker.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to City Manager and to the Police Chief, and everyone's joining here today on this just important topic. I mean, it's on people's mind, and that's why we've had a lot of legislation, as I'll discuss, to address this. But this has become an all too frequent property crime in our state, the stealing of catalytic converters. And I want to let you know what our legislature is doing to combat this. Unfortunately, California is now the #1 state in the country in catalytic converter thefts. Catalytic converters are part of a car's exhaust system to help reduce air pollution. They're on all cars except for all electric vehicles. And thieves prize these converters because of the precious metals they contain: platinum, palladium, rhodium, and also because it takes a practiced thief less than 1 minute to remove a catalytic converter. They use an electric saw to hack it. And because of the price, they can get, when selling the stolen part for scrap, they can get around $1,000. But these thefts are extremely costly, as some of you unfortunately now know, to vehicle owners as well. It can cost vehicle owners 3 times that much to do the repairs. State Farm, just one of the companies that's insuring cars and drivers in our state, paid $23 million to California consumers in 2021 in connection with catalytic converter thefts, almost 10 times the amount it paid in 2019. In response to the soaring number of the thefts, the state Senate and the state assembly have been considering 5 bills this summer to toughen penalties for catalytic converters and just to strengthen our laws in this area. Our aim is to make it tougher for thieves to sell these stolen parts to scrap dealers or recyclers by requiring a car's vehicle identification number to be permanently marked on a catalytic converter, and to require scrap dealers and recyclers to keep better records of who they buy catalytic converters from, including obtaining documentation that the seller is the lawful owner of the car part. So to go through this legislation a little bit more in depth, let's start with the idea of marking catalytic converters with IDs of the cars they rightfully belong to. 2 bills taken together would require that a car's vehicle identification number be engraved or etched on a catalytic converter. These bills would also create rules around the sales, resales, repairs, and replacement of catalytic converters. For example, vehicles with catalytic converters could not be sold without having their vehicle identification number or VIN number engraved or etched into the catalytic converter. Catalytic converters could not be repaired or resold without being marked with their own VIN number. In the case of replacements or installations, a used catalytic converter must be marked with the VIN of its source vehicle. Recyclers or parts dealers would be required to pay for a catalytic converter only by traceable means. Existing law already prohibits cash payments and requires payments to be made by check. New law would allow electronic or other means of non-cash payments as long as the payment is traceable. Also, smog inspectors would be required to check for VIN markings on catalytic converters as part of the routine inspections that they already do. These two bills, one bill is SB 986 by my colleague Senator Umberg and AB 2682 by Assemblyman Gray, currently wait review by the Appropriations Committees in the Assembly and in the Senate, respectively. I want to talk about these three other bills for a moment. These bills taken together would add new restrictions on purchases of catalytic converters by recyclers or smelters and add new requirements for documenting the sales. For example, a recycler would be prohibited from buying a catalytic converter from dismantlers, auto repair dealers, or individuals without documentation that the seller is the lawful owner of the catalytic converter. That's what SB 1087 by Senator Lena Gonzalez would do. A recycler or smelter would have to obtain a thumbprint of the seller as well as documentation of the sale on hand and keep that on hand for at least 2 years. The paperwork would be viewable by law enforcement at any time. The thumbprint would be accessible to law enforcement with a search warrant. Those are requirements of AB 2407 by Assemblymember O'Donnell. Lastly, AB 1710 by Assemblymember Morisucci would require that a recycler who purchases a catalytic converter to collect detailed information on the vehicle from which a catalytic converter is obtained, including the make, model year, a copy of the vehicle's ownership title. The aim is to prevent a recycler from accepting a catalytic converter from an entity or an individual that is not the verified owner of the source vehicle or the catalytic converter. The information must be included in written purchase agreements already required by law and be maintained so the recycler's inventory can be matched against purchases. These three bills are under review by the Appropriations Committee for possible fiscal impacts to the state. So those are the 5 bills I wanted to walk you through in detail so you can see the seriousness, the rigor, the detail we're diving into here. Now, what's going to happen? Well, from here, we have a key hurdle on August 11th. We're going to find out which bills are moving forward out of appropriations committees. And then we have until August 31st to pass the bill. We have to pass it by August 31st. The 5 active bills would build on a bill that I supported last year and that was signed into law in October. This was a bill that targeted unlicensed auto dismantlers in the state, and it set escalating fines against violators starting from $250 and rising to $1,000 for 3 or more violations. I was just watching, we were watching Friday Night Lights with our son. You might have seen an unlicensed auto dismantler in that show, if you watched it. With catalytic converter thefts on the rise, I voted in favor of every bill that's become before me so far to prevent and crack down on this crime. And I look forward to voting on those and supporting those that reach the Senate floor. So we thank you again, Mayor, Chief Campbell, City Manager Futrell, and to our facilitator, Leslie Arroyo, for this opportunity to join you here today.
Great. Thank you, Senator Becker. And I know that you aren't able to stay for our entire town hall, so we certainly do appreciate your time this evening. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. I'd like to now introduce our mayor, Mark Nagales, who will add to the conversation on catalytic converter theft, as well as a couple different initiatives in our city that we're undertaking, which will be used to combat crime. Mayor?
Thank you, and good evening. Thank you all for joining us, and a special thank you to Senator Becker for the update. It's nice to hear what's going on in Sacramento, and we appreciate your efforts to combat the catalytic converter thefts, which is a problem statewide. Consistent with statewide and nationwide data, the South San Francisco Police Department, unfortunately, has seen an increase in catalytic converter thefts. Between January 2021 and June 2022, the police department has investigated 433 cases. This is not acceptable in our city. As mentioned by Senator Becker, catalytic converters are targeted by thieves because they are non-traceable, can be scrapped for a quick profit, and contain precious metals that these thieves can sell. Sadly, the victims of these thefts can pay up to $3,000 to replace a stolen converter. In California, existing laws make it extremely difficult for local law enforcement to stop the sale of stolen catalytic converters. At Wednesday's City Council meeting, the City Council will be voting to support Assembly Bills 1740 and 2407 to increase the tracking of catalytic converter sales and outline parameters for who may purchase or possess catalytic converters. Assembly Bill 2682, as the Senator also mentioned, requires any automotive repair dealer that installs or replaces the catalytic converter on a vehicle to ensure that the catalytic converter is permanently marked with a vehicle identification number. You may actually recall that last year, the city, in partnership with 2 of our local auto repair shops, offered a free program where residents could have their VIN numbers etched onto their catalytic converter, and over 200 of our residents took advantage of this program. This bill would take this idea statewide by requiring that catalytic converters be marked with the VIN number when a car is sold. These are among the important bills that the city will be looking to support, and we hope that this will make an impact not only statewide, but also right here in South San Francisco. In addition, at our City Council meeting this Wednesday, we're bringing forward an urgency ordinance to combat catalytic converter thefts in South San Francisco. We will make it a crime to possess an unattached catalytic converter without valid proof of ownership. It is our goal that this will hopefully help deter catalytic converter thefts and give the police department, our police department, the legal grounds to stop this activity from happening. I also wanted to share with you another initiative we're undergoing in South San Francisco. The city will be installing automated license plate reader cameras. These cameras will be strategically placed at on and off ramps to freeways and roadways in and out of our city. In other cities, these cameras were proven to deter crime, locate wanted vehicles, and help solve cases. The technology will be used by the police department for official law enforcement purposes only, to receive alerts on vehicles that have been used to commit crimes or associated with missing persons. In addition, the system can be searched in real time to develop suspect leads on crimes that have just occurred in our city. The city is a believer in technology, so we're going to use this technology to enhance the safety of our city, and these cameras allow the police department to do just that. The cameras are designed to focus on license plates and vehicle descriptions. The privacy of our community members is of the utmost importance. These cameras are not live cameras. They do not have any facial recognition software and are not designed to capture photographs of drivers or passengers, but they do provide another tool for law enforcement to keep our city safe. Now, I wanted to mention that I really appreciate my colleagues who are here as well, the members of our city council, because this is an important issue that all of us are focused on. So thank you to my colleagues on the city council for being here. And now let me also turn this over to our police chief, Scott Campbell, who will talk about more initiatives and the successes the city has seen when it comes to combating property crime in South San Francisco. Chief Campbell?
Thank you, Mayor Nagales, and thank you, Senator Becker, for joining us this evening. And hello, South San Francisco. I'm your Police Chief Scott Campbell, and as you've heard, property crime is on the rise throughout the state. And I'd like to share with you what we've been experiencing here in our town, South San Francisco. And in doing so, I'd like to break it down into 3 categories, one being catalytic converter thefts, the second being vehicle burglaries, and the third being stolen vehicles. Catalytic converter thefts have been trending upwards since 2019, and we are now averaging about 1 theft a day. The thefts have occurred throughout our entire city. Our patrol officers and detectives are working diligently to identify and arrest those responsible. Since 2021, we have identified 22 individuals responsible for these thefts, and 11 were arrested on the spot, and the arrest, we sought out warrants, arrest warrants. As far as vehicle burglaries, that has remained consistent since 2019, also with an average of about one a day. Majority have occurred near the main roadways and freeway corridors, so we're hoping that the new ALPR technology is going to really help us to solve some of these crimes. Most vehicles targeted have been due to high value items left in plain sight, such as laptops and suitcases. And we've also noticed an upwards trend in work trucks being targeted for high value tools that are stored inside. Again, our officers and detectives continue to be proactive to address this problem. Since 2021, we have identified 25 individuals responsible. 16 were arrested on the spot, and the rest we sought arrest warrants for. In addition to that, which is very important, our personnel have arrested 61 individuals in possession of burglary tools, meaning that they had the intent and the means to commit burglaries. We just stopped them before the act was committed. So a lot of proactivity going on out there. The number of stolen vehicles has fluctuated since 2019. We are currently averaging about 24 a month. We have seen a spike in work trucks being stolen that again contain thousands of dollars in tools. And these trucks are typically recovered in either San Francisco or across the bay, minus the tools, of course. And since 2021, our personnel have identified and arrested 27 individuals responsible for vehicle theft. So all these property crimes can be difficult to solve due to the fact there are numerous individuals and crews responsible, and a significant majority are not South San Francisco residents. They're people coming into our town and targeting our residents and visitors. Our police department does remain committed to working with our community members to address these crimes. And as a result, we have seen several success stories. For example, during the month of July, we had 3 individuals in a gray Nissan Juke that were responsible for, we believe, dozens of catalytic converter thefts in South San Francisco. We were able to gather pieces of private residential security camera footage to identify this vehicle and share that information with neighboring agencies. The Pacifica Police Department was able to locate this vehicle in question, and they were able to capture 2 of the 3 individuals responsible. Our detectives are now working to prepare a prosecutable case for these 2 individuals for the crimes that they committed in our city. So we as an organization continue to monitor these trends, and we are using all available resources. We have initiated directed patrols during peak theft times. We continue to work with our allied agencies and share valuable information. And we have initiated data-driven special undercover surveillance operations to help target where these crimes are occurring. So what can you do as a South City resident to help prevent yourself from being a victim of property crime? If possible, park vehicles in a secure garage or well-lit area. Motion sensors and alarms could help deter as well as alert you to suspicious activity. Do not leave valuables in plain view. If possible, document serial numbers of all high-valued items that would give us the lead in tracking the stolen property if it is in fact stolen. Consider installing GPS tracking devices in your vehicles and or a steering wheel lock. And as far as catalytic converters, consider investing in a theft deterrent cage device that could be installed on your vehicle, or have a steel bar welded across the converter. It makes it much more difficult for these individuals to steal the converters. And as what was already mentioned, have either your VIN number or license plate number etched onto that catalytic converter. So if we are able to stop an individual with the number of converters, we're able to track down where it came from, and that just creates more of a prosecutable case on our end. Speaking of video cameras, the ability for us to obtain home surveillance camera footage has been a huge factor in solving many of our cases. But most importantly, just be aware of your surroundings, get to know your neighbors, working together to identify and report suspicious activity is a benefit to keeping your community safe. We do have a number of successful neighborhood watch programs in the city. And if you are interested in starting one, you're welcome to contact the police department and we'll point you in the right direction to get things up and running. Lastly, please be a good witness and do not physically approach anyone committing these crimes. They should be considered armed and dangerous. We have had situations that have occurred that have turned violent. And the last thing that we want is to have one of our residents or visitors injured as a result of a property crime. Additionally, crime prevention tips can be found on our website at www.ssf.net/crime prevention. And please be safe and be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief Campbell. Now, this concludes our formal presentation for tonight. We do want to turn it over to you all in terms of questions, and we have received some in the chat feature. I do know that Senator Becker is going to have to hop off quickly, but I do have one particular question for you, Senator, that we did receive in our chat function that I'll give you the opportunity to answer. And this is from a resident that said, "Hi, Senator, I understand that stolen catalytic converters are no longer being sold to junkyards and recyclers. I have heard that they are being thrown in shipping containers and shipped overseas for processing. Can this be confirmed? And if this is true, they don't feel as though the bill will be effective." Any thoughts on that?
It's an interesting point. I'm curious, Chief, if you've heard of that. I have not heard that yet. Now that I do hear it, it resonates that it could possibly be true. So I'll have to look into that on our side. I just don't know enough about the sort of supply chain, so to speak, and whether that's a viable, alternative for thieves. Chief, have you heard anything about that?
I have not heard about these items being shipped out, but I know there was a recent case a couple of weeks ago where I believe a large moving truck, semi-type truck, was stopped traveling to Idaho, and the entire thing was full of cut catalytic converters. So I can only imagine they were possibly getting more money for in another state than California for these items.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. We'll look into that. I mean, it's to some extent, with some of these things, it is a whack-a-mole game. That's why with so many bills, they try to address different pieces of it. But I appreciate that. We will look into that.
Great. Thank you, Senator Becker. I just wanted to remind folks, if you do have questions, there's a couple ways to do this. You can email, which we have received during this town hall. You can email cityinfo@ssf.net. If you happen to be on your computer, you can go in the Q&A feature and submit your question there. And then if you're not at a computer, feel free to text 650-636-6668. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and read some of the questions that we received ahead of time here. So the first question that we've had is, what are some legal ways people can protect themselves? For example, is carrying pepper spray legal? A stun gun, is that legal? Chief?
Yes, so it is legal to possess the spray as well as a stun gun if you're not a convicted felon. But I do have to say, unless you're in a situation that you need to protect yourself, by all means protect yourself. But the last thing we want to do is someone to confront an individual with a stun gun or the OC spray when it's not necessarily required at the time. Best thing to do is call 911 and have the police respond and just stay in a safe area.
Another question is, and this one this one's a little tough, but how will the new legislation stop petty crime, and will it increase the punishment for those that are committing the crime?
That I would say that's yet to be seen. As a police department, we're going to do our best to try to stop all crime, and we'll just have to keep watching the trends, and hopefully we can reduce that by our proactivity as well as our community members being alert and taking precautions to prevent being victims.
Chief, maybe I can follow up on that in terms of the details, because currently right now, if you were to pull over someone and they had catalytic converters, you wouldn't be able to, I guess, arrest that person because you didn't witness them actually stealing the catalytic converters, right? However, you might be able to pull them over for other things like you mentioned earlier. And so that our emergency ordinance would potentially empower you in the sense that if there was a suspect to have all those catalytic converters, that you would do obviously the investigation in terms of making sure that person who did steal that catalytic converter would be arrested. Am I correct on that, on the emergency ordinance?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So it's giving you another tool in terms of making sure that our city stays safe. So.
Great, thank you. Another one is there such a thing as citizen's arrest? And what does that really mean?
Sure. So there is a thing called citizen's arrest. So police officers are only allowed to arrest someone for misdemeanor crimes if they're committed in their presence. There's a few exceptions like DUI and things like that. But if for example, if we go to a store and someone committed a petty theft, we need to get a citizen's arrest by the store owner or the victim in order to make an arrest in that case. So, for example, if a resident saw someone stealing their mail out of their mailbox and an officer were to stop them down the street, we'd have to have that resident tell us that they wanted to make a citizen's arrest in order for us to create a prosecutable case.
Okay, thank you, Chief. And another question is, what is the penalty for theft of a catalytic? And will theft booking be prosecuted? With the new proposed laws, I foresee costs, DMV identifying, being passed on to individual owners. So again, what is the penalty for the theft of a catalytic, and will theft booking be prosecuted?
Right, so every case is different. There's a number of penal codes that are on the books that we can enforce if we in fact witness the theft of the catalytic converter. As long as if the officer sees it, we get charged with vehicle tampering. We get charged with grand theft because these catalytic converters are worth more than $950, and we could also charge them with vandalism because you're vandalizing the vehicle. So potentially 3 felony charges, but I don't know what the end result of that would be.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Here's another question that's come through our chat. And again, if you have questions, you can go to the Q&A section on Zoom, or you can email cityinfo@ssf.net. One person says, I have a 2018 hybrid Prius and understand it does not have the desirable metals. Do these thieves know the difference?
I would suspect that they've done their homework and they know the difference.
Okay. Another question is, let's see here. A person said this, I believe this question is reference to the installation of the cameras, but they had said, has this been a successful deterrent in other cities?
Well, 100% successful. There's been a lot of studies throughout the country. These cameras, the flock safety ALPR cameras, have been known to reduce crimes throughout cities. And it's really a game changer for us to be able to do our jobs. And we have a number of success stories ourselves from neighboring cities that have these systems already in place.
Can you briefly describe one of them? I think the one I keep thinking of is when a suspected vehicle passed through San Bruno and we were alerted. Do you mind just touching on that?
Sure. Yeah, we had a number of incidents, but the one in particular that you're referring to was a vehicle that had been used in 2 armed robberies, one in Sacramento and one in San Francisco. That license plate was entered into this system. We were notified that it went through the San Bruno ALPR system. Our officers spotted the vehicle in front of Walgreens in South San Francisco, stopped the vehicle, encountered 3 individuals who had loaded firearms. And as a result of that notification, we were able to probably prevent a robbery from occurring in South San Francisco and safely arrest these individuals who were responsible for violent crimes in other cities.
Thank you, Chief.
This one's again for the Chief here. Are we seeing a lot of repeat criminals in these thefts, or are there new criminals every time? And wondering if the punishment gets more severe with repeat arrests.
Yeah, so this is tricky with the property crimes that are happening now. A lot of the individuals responsible for these crimes, historically, it's the same group of individuals that commit the crime over and over again. And we're seeing with the data sharing capabilities now, there's absolutely dozens and dozens of individuals that are either working independently or with the group to commit these crimes. So if we identify one, there's going to be, dozens more that are out there. So it is challenging. Unfortunately, it's very lucrative for a lot of these individuals to keep committing these crimes. Yes, I would say that if they do have prior convictions, then the district attorney is going to look at the case differently and hopefully hold them accountable for their actions.
Another question that's come in the chat feature, why not use the money involved and help car owners to get shields for their catalytic converters? Online costs are about $150 per car, then the fees will go to other areas. That's a tough one.
I will say this, that the event that I mentioned earlier, where 200 of our residents signed up to have their VIN etched, we realized how successful that was in terms of the number of participants, and we've discussed potentially doing something again in the future. So if and when we do something like that, we'll make sure to alert our residents about it. So
I will say we are actually doing the background research on this. You can buy these shields on Amazon.com and other sites. Toyota Prius is about $58, but there's some models where the shield itself is as much as $200. And then just today, some staff called around to body shops to see, well, how much will it cost to install? And it's about an additional $200 just to install it. So all in, you're probably in for $300 or $400 for one of these shields. But it is information we'll provide to the city council and talk to some of these body shops and see if there's a way we can make this work for people in South San Francisco.
maybe I can throw this to Senator Becker. Maybe there's something in terms of the state can look at in terms of providing some sort of state funding or making it mandatory for if you're selling cars in California that have this, maybe having this protective shield, so wanted to give some ideas to our senators.
Yeah, that's
Great
good.
conversation going on here. So,
as I've seen, sometimes you do have to keep iterating until we get it right. I mean, I'm very hopeful for these 5 bills here that we're going to come up with, with something that's going to really make a difference. But I do hear you on the shields. I will bring that back. And one thing is to discuss is, with the new car dealers, we get them involved in this and say, hey, what's possible? What can we make happen? So I will bring that up.
thank you, Senator.
And at this point, I do need to leave, but I appreciate everyone. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in this. I'm sorry for anyone who's had this happen to them. I want to thank, again, thank the mayor, thank the chief, thank the city manager for having this forum, actually the first forum that I participated in. So I appreciate your proactivity and the focus that you brought to this. And again, want folks to know that I'm working hard at this. Please send other ideas. And I'm really hopeful that these policies are going to make a difference, and that working with law enforcement, we can apprehend the rest of the people, especially the people that are doing the bulk of the thefts and sales here. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, we do have a couple more questions. And again, if you do have a question, feel free to go in the chat feature, the Q&A feature, or if you want to email cityinfo@ssf.net. If you're unable to email, you're not at a computer, you can text 650-636-6668. Another question that came through are, why aren't the fines and penalties proposed stronger? Will there be fines proposed for recyclers who break the rules?
Yeah, so I can answer a little bit to that. So recycling companies, they are governed by the state. And when people, the ones that are run lawfully, when you go to recycle metal, they get your identification, sometimes with thumbprint, and you don't get paid for your recycling until like a week after, in case something does end up coming up being stolen or something like that. But yeah, we're looking at all different avenues. The recycling centers are a big one. And from the information that I'm receiving, most of the stolen catalytic converters that are taken off the peninsula or ending up in the East Bay at recycling centers out there.
Okay, and this is kind of shifting directions, but this is a fun question, and it says, and this is to the chief, I think, would you consider exploring a soccer tournament sponsored by SSFPD, the fire department, the city of South San Francisco, and community group, where kids of all ages can participate and get the opportunity to get to know the officers on a friendly setting to build a relationship at an early age?
Absolutely, 100%. We love working with our community and working with the children of South San Francisco. So I'd love to work with someone to get that going.
Well, we can definitely do that, and the person that put that chat feature in, you know how to reach us, and you can always email cityinfo@ssf.net with those kind of ideas. Those are great ideas for our community. I did get another question here. I have heard on Nextdoor that cars have been robbed of their catalytic converters, even with a shield. I don't know if that's anything you've heard, Chief?
So I'm not aware of any in South San Francisco. I know that that the shields are a prevention. It does create adds more time for the suspects to actually try to steal it. What I have heard is that they're not able to actually steal it, but they will cut it. So you're left with a damaged catalytic converter regardless.
Okay, well, at this point, we have no more questions that have come in. I'll give you one last moment here. I do want to reiterate that the chief had brought up www.ssf.net/crime prevention. And there's a wealth of information on there. There's also a printable brochure on how to prevent crime and catalytic converter information. I did get one email here from a person. It did say, just FYI, my mechanic purchased the cat cage. The cost is approximately $160. The installation cost $550. So that's just a little bit of information for folks. But at this point, I don't see any other questions. I'll turn it over to the mayor if you'd just like to say any final parting thoughts.
No, thank you, Leslie. And again, thank you for the great questions. Like you, I'm frustrated in terms of what I'm seeing in terms of the uptick. That's why we are looking at supporting the bills that Senator Becker mentioned, and also in terms of passing this urgency ordinance to make sure that it gives us more tools in terms of making sure our police can do their job if there is a catalytic converter theft that's happening in South San Francisco. So it's not going to be the last thing that we do. We will continue to monitor and see how we can improve and make South San Francisco even more safer. And please, if you would like to, please participate in the city council meeting on these issues, because it's important for myself and my colleagues to hear from you in terms of what's happening in the city. So I appreciate you just taking a little bit of time and joining us today. So I also let me throw it over to Chief Campbell if he wants to say anything as well.
Sure. I just want to thank you, Mayor Nagales, and council for taking a proactive approach and giving us some additional tools to be able to do our jobs. As a police department, we do remain committed to keeping South San Francisco one of the safest places to live, and we're not going to lose sight of that. So just please work together, communicate with us, and let us know. If you don't say anything, we're not going to know. So talk to your neighbors. If you see something, say something, and we'll do our best to take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just one last reminder, if you ever have comments, feel free to email cityinfo@ssf.net, and we respond to that daily. So comments, questions, if you think of something after the fact, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. But at this point, this concludes our town hall. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.